Welcome back to Launch Your Light, a podcast that covers the soul and strategy of running a business and sharing your heart's work with the world. I am so excited to bring to you a new guest today. Today we have Alexis here. She is a retired doctor of Chinese medicine, and she is practicing medical intuitive psychic energies. She is a trance channel, a metaphysical teacher, founder. She is the creatrix of the expansion principle, which is energy healing technology. She is an author and writing more behind the scenes right now. She has been a spiritual growth mentor for over 18 years. And now, recently, more recently in those years, she's been working with a trans-dimensional being named Simon for 8 years in the making now. Oh my goodness, do we have things to talk about, Alexis? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. We do have things to talk about.
I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like we've been flowing together for a few years now and have just energetically
Yep.
aligned
Yes.
by the end of this 2024. And I'm so excited to have you in our communities, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. So, I'm really excited to talk to women who are bridging science and spirit. I've been doing that for
Yeah,
years, but it feels like it's getting stronger on the planet.
I
And
agree.
you are one of those people who are doing that. So let's start there. Let's start with your story background, because we were giggling about your mom and your dad and how you grew up in this kind of bridge between spirit
Yeah.
and science already. And then you ended up, as a doctor in Chinese medicine, right? So why don't you just let us know
hmm
what's a little background on your story?
Yeah. So, background for me is I grew up with a father that practiced an Afro-Cuban religion called Santeria. And he was also, or is, he's retired now, he's still living. He was a postal worker, he was a mailman, and my mom was a nurse. Um, So I grew up with a lot of the biomedical stuff. I remember in high school I had required reading of medical journals to learn different things from her, and then this observing this deep spirituality from him and doing readings for people, and this really deep belief in our family of these deities, and learning the stories and going to different religious ceremonies, and just it was very much my memory of it was that our experience was very saturated with that religion, with that experience. um so it was obviously really meaningful for me because I remember it just really prominent. So it was very normal. So magic was normal. I didn't really question those sorts of things. I was aware that other people believed differently than I did. But I also went to Christian camp, so it was very much aware of everything spiritual, the different ways you could connect to divinity. And my thought was always like, well, why can't it be everything? Can't it just be everything? And in a lot of ways, that's how I feel now, is that, and I don't even think of being a bridge, right? Because one thing is connected to the other. And I get really excited when there's new scientific discoveries, quote unquote, right?
Right.
Of things that indigenous people all over the world have been aware of, and people who have had the honor and privilege of retaining their traditions, even when they locate to different parts of the world. It's just a beautiful thing that when you can keep that tradition. But we've known that we've known so much of it, so it's neat to see the bridge now and more. I so agree with you that more and more people are becoming aware of that interconnection and the importance of the interconnection. Like, yes, it's important to recognize that there's a non-physical component, but also like our bodies are the conduit by which we have our spiritual experience. So if we ignore our body, we're missing a whole huge part of why we incarnated in the first place. Like connecting to the spiritual, like when we're non-physical, we already, all the things we're trying to do, we already know how to do that. It's really, can we marry both? Can we be this beautiful consciousness in this physical form with everything that it comes with being physical, you know?
Oh, oh, I'm like over here. Yes. Yes. Okay. So what did your mom do again? What did you say your mom did?
She was a nurse, did all kinds of nursing, but mostly surgical. And then she just did procedures and she's a very good nurse. And yeah, she was a nurse for, I don't know, like 40 years.
And then how were you called to ancient Chinese medicine? What avenues were you called to there?
Yeah. So in my early 20s, I worked for an acupuncturist and I was her, assistant and I did her medical billing and did different things for her. And so I met people and their stories and I'd write the notes for her. And so I would see the progression and it really caught my attention. And I just thought, wow, this is really, really amazing. I had always, from being a small child, I was very intrigued by healing in the bigger sense. I remember we had a shaman come to our school and I just was very connected to her. And I remember feeling like this,
Mm.
where I almost felt her thoughts because I remember coming home and saying that she said that I could be one too. But then always remember thinking that memory over my head. I'm like, I don't know if she said it out loud. And now I understand it very possibly could have just been like a transmission
Yeah.
of information, you know? And so I always had that connection. I always felt called to be a healer to help people. Like I just always felt that pull. And so Chinese medicine was something that was very interesting to me. And then I had my son pretty early on. I was 22 when I was pregnant and he was born. And then I turned 23 shortly after him being born. And is that right? Yeah, it is. It's funny. The older I get, the younger I realize I was.
Mm.
Um, but I had him. And so during that time, I just really, for anyone who has children, there's a redefinition of ourself and the way that you relate to yourself if you answer the call to that. And I did. And I knew that I couldn't wait until he was grown to figure things out. And I went to acupuncture school and I had already I
Cool.
was done with an elementary education. Just, I think I had like one semester left of an elementary education degree. And so I'd already gone to college, but then made this big shift and went to acupuncture school and did that while
Whoa.
he was little. Yeah. And then had my daughter during school. It was a very,
Wow.
yeah, interesting thing.
I call it our a blackout period. I'm
Well,
like,
I mean, if we're going to talk about those, I think the last 20 years might have been one for me, but we digress.
that's
Let's
another
not.
that's another podcast episode.
It
Yeah,
may
like
be.
it's always I found it amazing what women say. They do like listen, I will also preface this with the scrambled eggs brain that is postpartum
Hmm.
and the hormonal journey. Like I get it. But then there's also like these deeper, amazing conversations with women that are like, oh, I did that in those younger years, like really powerful movements
Yeah.
in the self. And I'm speaking to that because I think other women need to hear this, right? That it's
Yeah.
such an empowering time for us as much as it can be debilitating on so many levels, you know?
It is. I mean, I think my observation over the years, I was focused on fertility and women's health and all that for a long time and with my acupuncture practice. But something that I observed is that oftentimes it's even more difficult when you're a full adult and you have children because you have the integration of who you were with who you are with who you're becoming, where I feel like from my personal experience having been such a young woman wasn't fully formed in whom she was, that I
Mm.
became who I was with my children
Ooh.
and through mothering. And like I was always very aware that I needed to retain my sense of autonomy and who I was as a woman and as a person. And I think that's part of what led me to go to school and just do all the things that I've done in my life, um, while I walked being their mom too. And I never forgot that I was a mom, but I definitely wasn't the person who always put that label first. And like, you know, a lot of within the parenting, there's a lot of talk about, what kind of mom are you? Are you a stay-at-home mom? Are you a working mom? Are you a this? Are you that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm all these things. And also, right, like you can
Yeah,
be everything. And so, yes, it's an interesting portal that we walk through that doesn't ever end, right?
right. Now you're a homeschooling mom. So you've gone on the homeschooling path with your kids in their teens, right? Or preteens?
Yeah, so my son did private school, and when we moved out here to Oregon, he went back to public school. There was a great public school in the town that we lived in, and he actually just graduated um over the summer in June, and he's 18, and then my daughter is 14, and so homeschooling her, and it shifts. We did a lot of unschooling when she was
Yeah.
young, and I she didn't really want to, sit down and have these lessons. And so I would go out into the world and do lessons via the world. And that it is a lot of work to do it that way because you have to plan things and know things, and and that's where all of the paths that I've been led to, even it's, oh, what a beautiful thing to think about. Even the things that you think you don't use, you use in life, right? So I had this elementary education degree that I didn't actually ever go out into the world and become a elementary school teacher, but really helped me because it almost prepared me to homeschool her. And then now we're doing a little bit more, I'm guiding her, but she's doing a lot more of the learning on her own and things like that. So it's just neat to see the progression.
Oh, you're so
Mhm.
fascinating. Okay,
Oh,
let me get us back on track. But this is so much. Most of the women that I talk to are also mothers. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Not everyone, but a lot are. And a lot of us, this is an interesting conversation. I don't think there's enough space for it, is to talk about how we are fulfilling these missions, right, on planet.
Yeah.
And we've got this soul purpose, and we're also parents through this.
The multi-mission, because they're a mission too, aren't they?
Absolutely. And they
Yeah.
have missions.
Mhm.
And you can sense that and feel them
Yeah.
right off them. So, oh, okay. So now let's fast forward to okay. So then how long did you spend? Almost 20 years? What was it, 15 years as an acupuncturist, right?
Yeah, I think it was about 15. Yeah, did it for a long time, and I'm actually in the process of getting my license again and coming out of retirement here in Oregon.
Hey.
Yeah, it's something that if I'm honest, I fought it. But it just feels all these things started lining up, and it was very obvious that it was the correct thing to do.
Mhm.
I'm recently divorced, a lot of changes happening, and just a lot of really beautiful pointings to it's going to be different this time. It's a different purpose around it. And um just I don't know, I think at this point in my life it's just like surrendering into the flow of it all, and
Mhm.
that we can't actually force anything. And it's beautiful to have dreams, and it's important to have dreams and vision, and but coming from a place of like our heart, and our soul and our consciousness, not the human part. And I feel like whenever we're pushing, it's because we're connected to a human goal,
Mm.
and a human desire, and that's not always aligned really for us. And so I just always try and check myself when I'm pushing, but um, yeah.
This flowed, you mean in regards to you coming back to this too?
Yeah, coming back to it and also retaining, the energy work. And so I do a little bit of everything at this point. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I have a bio, right? But so I do in-person channeling events. I do online channeling events. I do private stuff. I teach on just about any metaphysical topic you can think of. I love teaching. It's just a huge passion of mine. And then training other practitioners, that's a big part of what it is now. It's like, yes, could I right before our call, I did a healing session with somebody for kidney stones. A
Ooh,
friend of mine who's a chiropractor is like, oh, this person is having this. I'm like, well, that's kidney stones is actually easy for me. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, it will take a few minutes. So she went from a level of like 6, 7 pain down to a 2
wow.
in like 20 minutes. And so that stuff's easy, but my passion now is also like in helping train people to then augment their practices, whatever it is. And I think that you're talking about the bridge and the intersection, not just of, you know, science and spirituality, but like of the mundane and the mystical. And
Yes.
so, like, how, I don't care what profession you have, you can integrate energy work into that profession. I don't care if you're an artist, if you're a coach, if you're a welder, I don't care what you do. You're an accountant, you're a lawyer, it doesn't matter. Understanding energy and knowing how to move it, and then also becoming skilled in different energetic modalities that help augment the experience that's the future. That's what we're doing. And weaving our
Absolutely.
lives and weaving the energies and weaving the trajectory of humanity, quite frankly.
Yes. The f-
And yeah.
the future is frequency.
It sure is.
And oh, I'm so excited. I mean, honestly, I know there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, but I'm like excited for
I
the
don't do doom and gloom. Yeah, it's not because I negate it or say that it's not real or true, because I see it, but I find it's
future.
not my path to focus on that. And I say it that way because it is, for some people, that's the
Yeah.
thing that helps,
Yeah.
and they have their role in that.
Yep.
Um, and it's not about light and dark or anything like that. It's just my focus is I need to understand my role, and my role is forward, and my role is of hope, and my role of knowing that some things are inevitable and some things are non-negotiable, and the trajectory of humanity going in a positive way is a non-negotiable to me. So for me to entertain anything other than that is a waste of my personal energy. Other people, like I said, that could be their thing, and I more power to them, and we need that. But for
Yes.
me,
Hmm.
it's exciting right now. It's
Yeah.
beautiful to see people wake up, and it doesn't always look the same as everyone else.
No. We've been talking a lot in our community in the Soul Purpose Collective about like
Mhm.
there are those of us who are here to lay a lot of these systems to rest and a lot of these
Yeah.
ways of life to rest, like death dueling the world that isn't working anymore, is what I
Oh,
call
yeah.
it, right? And there are many of us that are here to doula the life, like, right, the new world and whatever that looks like. And I know I'm being very like two different categories there, but there's a
It's the
lot.
same.
Right, it's a lot going on. And a lot of us are here to play between both of those worlds with things.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm doing that in the business world. I'm still operating in some old systems of business. I'm still, right, but I also can see very clearly and am paving a path for many on how to do this in a way that really aligns with us and works for us and serves us and humanity. Oh
absolutely.
my goodness, so many things. Okay, wait.
So
So
many things.
so then what explain to us Simon and like how did that happen? And how did that come about?
Yeah. So I had been practicing. I'm from Miami, Florida originally, and I had moved up to a town a couple hours north, working in a group practice, doing really well. The kids were doing great. Everything was just, um, it's a good space for what was next. And what was next was my growth of spirituality. And I've had an awareness of my psychic abilities and a lot of my things since I was little tiny. But at this point, I was probably, I don't know, 29, 30, and really looking at, okay, what does it look like to expand this? What does it look like to lean into who I am? And I began working with a shamanic mentor. And in that process, and almost immediately, I started hearing the name Simon, just in my head over and over wherever I was. And so different, for those of anyone who's shamanically trained, a lot of it is you meet different helpers and guides, and a lot of that is animals. And every time I would meet a helper, I'd ask, are you Simon? And it wasn't. And then one day we're trying to learn a new technique, and I couldn't do it, which was very unusual for me. I picked things up pretty quickly in this training and just in general, thankfully. And I just noticed that something was going on. So we did some fear release work. And in that fear release work is like, what do I need? And it was Simon.
Ooh,
And so it was like, okay, it's time to meet him. And so I remember sitting down and doing the work and doing the meditation, because all of this mentorship was over email. Okay. It was
wow.
all over email. It was not on, like the way we do it now. It was all
Right.
email. And so I would get my instructions and I would sit down and do things on my own. And it was really powerful. And so I remember doing this for the first time and having to attune my energy to his and like how big, how large he was. And at that point, I'd worked, I'd done a lot of mediumship over the years and um, worked with energies and, worked and channeled with Jesus, like just have done a lot of different things. And so I was used to energy and I was used to big energy, but this was just very vast.
Mm.
And so I worked with him and he started showing me this energy and that he's like, okay, we're going to do this. And it's so funny to look back now because I trance channel and he speaks through me. But back then it was all internal. And the
Mm.
level of trust and faith that I had at that point, like looking back is just, there's probably you could, if I had two words for my whole life, it's probably faith and trust. I
Ooh,
just like faith and trust and I move, faith and trust and I move. So three words, right? And that could be a whole podcast episode on its own
yeah.
because I know personal relationships, everything in my life has been like that. It's just I move, when I know something's correct, I just move. And so I started using the energy with my patients in my clinic, and people were getting better more quickly. And
Mm.
then I was marrying together a little bit of everything, of doing the acupuncture with the energy work, with some of the shamanic practices, and just like really, really changing people's lives.
Yeah.
Just really phenomenal work during that time. And I remember I was having a massage from a friend of mine who we used to trade, and I saw them for years. And during that, I had the words expansion principle come in and
Mm.
out and in and out. It's like, well, if you want me to do something with this, I need to remember what it is, you know?
Mhm.
And then it came in. And so from there, I was like, okay. And then shortly after that, I was like, this is a modality. This is what you're going to be doing. And I, at the time, as an acupuncturist, all our trainings are in person. This is pre 2020,
Right.
so everything's in person. You're doing a training, it's in person. And so I put together, I was going to do a retreat in Tryon, North Carolina, which is right outside of Asheville. And I got no bites for it. I put out the training, did all, and no movement. And so then the time came and went. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to pivot. And so I pivoted to, and I put together what is now the online training program for the expansion principle. And in the beginning, it was 4 months. It's now 6, and it's evolved a lot. But yeah, we offered it, and we had 6 people come into the very
Yes.
first round.
Yeah.
And since then, that was in 2018. Since then, we've had around somewhere in the 50s, around 50 something practitioners, which is just really beautiful. And
Amazing.
yeah, yeah. Um, and so during that time, it was working a lot on that. And I left the group practice, had my own practice, was getting the online stuff going, was doing, a lot of soul coaching and spiritual mentorship and all of that sort of thing while building up the expansion principle. And in 2020, I wrote my first book in a book writing container in 1 week. And my
Of course you
publisher,
did.
of course I did.
Oh my God.
I remember reading the sales page and I was like, I sometimes take a little bit of time to choose things, but I was like, oh, should I do it? Should I do it? And it's like, okay, I'm just going to do it. So I jumped in, I think the evening before. He doesn't even let people do that anymore. You have to I think you need to sign up within, 3 days prior to the beginning, but I was like the night before. And during that container, one of the things he asked me is, well, can't you just talk to Simon Abraham? I'm like, well, I bet I could. And I sat down and I put on a recording and I just went deep into myself and into meditation as I do when I would talk to him. And he started talking.
Woo.
And so because what I was doing is I was having sections of the book be his words. And
Right.
so I was having, it was taking a lot of work to do that. And this is when, the publisher was like, why don't you just try this? And it worked. And so I did that. And um I worked with a student of mine who lived in the town, and we met up, and I would just go into deep meditation trance, and she'd just talk to Simon, and he would
Yes.
answer things. And
Yes.
then after, the whole world shut down and all of those sorts of things. In about April, it became clear that I needed to do the first one and introduce him to people. And so I did one online about time and timelines. And the rest kind of is history because shortly, I think about maybe 6 months later, I started doing them every month. And
Hmm.
then after about another 6 months, we started doing them twice a month. So now we have something called Bardo, and Bardo is a Tibetan term for that in between death and life and the after, all those things. And so it's a very transformative period of time. And I was told that this would be called Bardo, and that's what happens is we coach and we go deep and we just all of the things and we transmute energy and then we channel and everyone gets information and message from him, and we do that twice a month. And I do them in person now, and it's just interesting how the different sectors. And I think like in business, I've been in online space business for about 8 years. Like a lot of us came in around the same time. And the thing that I've noticed is niche, 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 niche. Everybody wants you to niche. And like sometimes like you're the niche, right? Sometimes you are the niche. And I found like I don't need to try and only do one thing. Like it's okay that it's all these different things. And so
That's why we get along so well. Because I have that course on release the niche.
I know.
I teach in the opposite direction. I'm like, women,
Hmm.
we are creatrixes. We are creators.
Hmm.
We've got a lot to do, ladies. And I understand the niche. I know we get the niche, but I think that's freeing for some women to hear that it's like okay to have a lot of things to do and have a spiraling, windy road
Yeah.
in this journey called life, you know? Actually, this segues perfectly into that. Everything that you're saying is fascinating. And I am willing to bet you have had blocks and obstacles on your path to get where you are now. What your face. Right? Because this is like, it sounds so magical. It's like, oh my God, but
Yeah.
I know, I just know from experience and data and research with the amount of people I've worked with over the years that you must have hit some interesting earth classrooms. What are
Hmm.
either what is some advice you have for people, or if you want to break down some of them, what are the ones that are alive in you right now or that are coming to memory for you right now that were like blocks to you fully believing in yourself to create a modality, to channel interdimensional beings like holy shit, even to go after and become doctor in Chinese medicine, right? Like,
Hmm.
dang. Right. So what were some of the blocks and obstacles you faced over the years?
Oh my goodness, so many, right? I think in some ways being a young mom,
Hmm.
you know, um I did a lot of is it, yeah, I felt alone for a long time. Felt
Mm.
alone for a long time. So I would say that, you know, and I created a lot of illusions to lower the level of aloneness, I think.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting. I found that I would go through periods of time where I would human really hard. And my work has always been very, very important to me. And it's so funny because until I came into the relationship that I'm in now, um, my work was the top most important.
Mhm.
And it all feels different now. But yeah, the interpersonal stuff. I think that feeling that I needed to fix people,
Mm.
that was something where a lot of my energy went instead of to myself and to my work. And I feel like we really need to we're taught that we're not supposed to focus on ourselves, but the only way for us to help other people and to do our work in the world and to maintain a mission focus and to enjoy our lives is to be self-centered. The
Mhm.
hell else are we going to be centered on, right? Like, I think we need to be centered on oneself, and it doesn't mean at the exclusion of anyone else, because there's also then the expectation that they ought to be centered on themselves as well. And then we all are these beautiful beings that are centered within our own divinity, interconnected through each other's divinity, right? And it's just this beautiful thing, rather than constantly trying to negate our own beauty and focus on other people. And so I think that coming to that place was definitely a big thing. Um, not thinking I was crazy. I mean, that was a block. That was, yeah, that's a big one. Um, something that wasn't a block, but definitely was something that it continues to be in our classroom is that trust piece, is deepening into trust over and over and over again. And like my life has never made any sense, none of it, you know. Um, finally knowing that I needed to leave a marriage of 20 years
Wow.
and move into the next phase and not knowing what that was even going to look like. How would anything even work on any level, you know? I won't go into all of the nitty-gritty details, but like, I had to leave my home
Mm-hmm.
and all of everything that I knew it's just a really interesting thing of just leaning into trust. So sometimes the things that are our biggest classrooms aren't necessarily like blocks per se. They're just these themes. And so for me, some of the themes are definitely trust. And that's the thing when I lean into that, that's when I have the most success. And what I mean by success isn't just monetary, but the most joy in my life, the most ease, the most all these things of like, yes, yes, yes. The juiciness comes from that trust. Another big theme for me, like many of us, is money. We just carries so many of us ancestrally and within our soup as a whole, meaning anything that makes us us. There's a lot of those money themes, and some people don't. I mean, I've met people who don't really have
Right.
that's not their theme, which
Right.
is But for me, it was one of those things where I needed to navigate that and really be comfortable, and I knew I needed to really early on because the only way to let this modality and let my work grow to the level that it will, you have to be clean on money. You just have to. And I think that for anybody listening, if you really aspire to these great levels of impact, you've got to get clean on that on money. You have to get clean on being held. You have to be clean on receiving. You have to, and I found like the receivership was a big block for me too, and I didn't fully know that, and I blocked that probably my whole life, and it's impacted me pretty greatly. Definitely was a soul thing that I came in with of that piece, and so now at this age, I'm 41, of deepening into receiving on all levels. And like I remember being in my practice when I was an acupuncturist early on, and something I would play with was receiving the thank you from my clients and my patients.
Right.
So many of us can't, or we think we put it, oh, well, they did such a great job. Well, yes. But if they could have done it on their own, they would have. Not to take away a person's, their power in it, because it's not that at all. It's just we're here. We would exist in vacuums if we weren't intended to be co-creating together,
Mm-hmm. Right.
you know? Um, so what else? I think those are the
Those
probably
are great.
big ones.
Those are scriptive, fantastic examples. And that's why I bring them up, because I think everyone needs to be reminded that along with this growth, right, comes the initiation to get there, comes
Oh yeah.
the friction to create something different. No one would grow and change if everything was so nice and chilling, but nothing on this planet stays the same. Nothing in this universe stays the same. But I think our society needs to be reminded of that, you know? So I love bringing this up. That's like my Scorpio. My stellium in Scorpio doesn't mind bringing up that transformational piece. It is
I
work.
love it.
And so much of the work I do with people is like reminding people that business is a spiritual experience. Business is a really in-depth self-empowerment tool, right? It's like the ultimate transformation, I'd say, to continuously share what you're here
Yeah.
to do with the world and be labeled God knows what on the
Oh
way.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's wild. So, okay.
Yeah, to say what I have to say is important. Listen to me. I mean, that's what we're all doing. That's what marketing is. That's what business is about, is that I'm important and I can help you. It's just such an interesting thing. But yeah.
We were talking about money on our call yesterday in the
Hmm.
Circle of Success Mastermind, and it was like we were talking about, I brought up the theme of like the energy of money, vibrates at the same speed and energy and frequency as love,
And
right?
expansion.
And expansion, right? And when you
Mhm.
get into that, it's like that expansion, that is a natural organic energy
Yeah,
flow on the planet
it is.
and in the universe.
It is the multiverse, the everything expansion is it. I mean, everything always continues. Some people like, oh, but it always, things always continue.
So our a mirrored reflection of us is that it's a natural state to continuously
Mhm.
want to grow and evolve.
Yes.
And we're not there, right? So we're like, oh, ooh, what are we blocking here? And you can mirror that over why people don't make more money, why they don't know how to call in money, hold money, love money, ex ex receive money. Like you were saying, you know what I mean? All of these things. And I've been
Mhm.
listening to a book where the woman channels money, and it's like it is
Mhm.
boundless energy source
Mhm.
available for all of us. And because it's really love, you know? And I mean, some people are not going to want to hear that, LOL. But when you start breaking down, when you release the currency bit, when you release the money bit, when you release the history of what people have done with it, what humans have chosen to do with it, when you get down to the energetic frequency of it, it's like this is a supportive energy here to technically help us further our purpose on planet Earth,
Mhm.
to further humanity. And for anyone who's listening to that, that is still hanging on to what we're saying here, right? The ability to receive money for what you do is in exchange for a service you're providing on some level, a service you're providing to further humanity, to
Mhm.
make the world a more healed space, a brighter space, a lighter space, whatever we're calling it,
Mhm.
right? I think it's very interesting. Money is going to be a big topic. I mean, we know that with
Oh yeah,
astrology and energy and blah, blah, blah. We don't need to talk about that today, but it's there. This is the topic. Money's changing, right?
it
And
is.
what I'm hearing and sensing, and we are agreeing in this, right? It's like it is also going to be supporting those of us who have these visions and missions
Yeah,
to further along, bringing more light to this planet.
absolutely.
Let that segue into like, okay, you've done all this. You have a amazing CV, right? Like you're what you've done and what you
Thanks.
pulled off and who you've become. Like, what is next for Dr. Alexis? What is on the horizons, my friend?
Hmm. Being in the yumminess of love, how about that?
Mm,
Um, I think a lot of it, the big thing for me this year has been expanding into receiving. And that's something that my partner, I have the most amazing partner, brings that to me all the time. And I just like this expansion of just receivership and to be held and loved and seen. And I feel like in that space and becoming more of myself and being able to say yes to um the alteration of our beingness, right? And so the what I mean by that is letting a lot of times we get stuck with who we are and it doesn't let us become who we're becoming because we're so stuck and committed to who we were before, who we are in the moment, and we can't let go of the things that are necessary to become who we're becoming, which is also us. So I love my future self as much as I love my current self, as much as I love my past self, right? And so for me, with all of that is allowing myself to be seen more. As I am able to receive more in my personal life, it's just showing me how much more I can then give back to others and like having that capacity for expansion and demonstrating the beauty of being human. And like we're so focused on the hardship of being human, but what about the beauty of being human? So on a practical level, things that will be coming more are like the podcast will be now regular. I have a podcast as well, so that
yes,
would be lovely.
yes.
I have a book that I wrote several years ago, for actually many years ago, I guess we would really say. That will probably be published in 2025. And the expansion principle practitioner training, that's one of the big things is feels, whenever you have something that's so much bigger than you and it's such a big vision, it's always fun to see when's that turning point. And so, we'll see. maybe this year's turning point. Maybe we're hanging out with some EP practitioners in the making here as they listen to us. But just
Maybe.
letting that unfold, you know?
Oh my God, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Where I know we're going to put a link in the show notes for
Mhm.
you. What is going to be the best way for people to find you, find all these things? We'll figure out what link that is, but just for those who are listening right now, who are like, I need to look her up on Instagram right now. Like, what are your handles? Where can
Yeah.
people find you? And we'll save the link for the show notes, but like, where can they find you if they're looking right now?
Yeah, so if you want to Google it up, Expansion Principle Institute will give you most of the things. Um, I think that Instagram right now, currently, is Dr. Alexis underscore Simon. It's changed. I changed my last name this year, and so that's been a whole thing. And most people professionally would advise you against doing that this late in the game. You know, I've been professionally my former last name for about 8 years. And in terms of being known, I've had the name for, I think I had it for like 18. Um, but that's how you can find me is Expansion Principle Institute, and that will lead you to all the places, and then we'll put formal links in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I also like, I feel like women just need to change. When they need to change, you do that change. Right? Don't you agree? Like,
Yeah.
was that an energy thing that you decided? Like you need, like you almost, oh, you had to override the mind and the societal programming around that to go, energetically, you needed that shift, right?
I needed it off of me as soon as possible. Yeah.
Right, right.
And you know what's odd because I think there's an old school idea, but your children have your last name and that's the father of your children and all those sorts of things. It's like life's bigger than that too. Like they're gonna be okay.
Yeah,
They know I love them. They're all right.
yeah.
And honoring myself and in that, and it's funny because even my current the name I have right now, Romeo, is the name I was born to. That was my maiden name. Still that doesn't feel like me either. And so professionally, the choice now is just to be Dr. Alexis for the most part, and that's what we're publishing as. And then I'll likely have another last name at some point. Um, so yeah, names are also a whole topic we could get into, right? Like that's a whole podcast because names are significant, but I don't think we're bound to the name that we were given at birth, where I know some people kind of feel like energetically on a soul level, that's the only thing. But I think that it's more than that. And I think that we can align whatever feels correct in any moment of our life. I think names are important. Yeah,
You do a lot of Instagram stories and stuff, right?
I do like Instagram
You
stories.
do, you do. I love watching your Instagram stories. You're a great speaker and you're
Thanks.
captivating on film to
Oh,
watch.
thanks so much.
So for anyone who's listening to that, you can literally just catch your stories. Like you have everything, you've got links and stuff, but it's nice to see like
Mhm.
if they want to see what you look like and just the energy that you bring and what's going on in your world, that's a good place for them to go to, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a great place. And if you're interested in the Channeling Expansion Principle Institute on YouTube, I think we have, I don't know, maybe like 20 different videos. And so, yes, it's other people's questions, but there's always stuff like we're human. We
Yeah.
all do the same thing over and over and over again. It's just personalized for our loveliness, right? But, there's a lot of really cool answers, really, really inspiring, beautiful work. And, at the end of each year, I do a year ahead for the next year, like this
Well,
really beautiful experience. Like it's a multi-day experience with Simon channeling collectively coming forward for the year ahead, and also individually for the participants. And you can see snippets of that in the YouTube. So if you're into like catching the energy and seeing what I do, going over there is the place to.
yes. Okay. Also, can I share? Like I love that you're a good example of someone who was in my audience and watching. And just kind of like
Yeah.
there, we're in each other's worlds, and then boom, something shifted. 5 years later, I did a live video, and you're like, "Hi, hello, here I am," and you like joined into my group, and we've been rocking and rolling together for like months.
Yeah.
I feel like now since I don't know if
Hmm.
that was like September, and now there's so much that we're doing, and we're on each other's podcasts. And like
Yeah.
just a reminder for anyone that I think
Hmm.
things really click into place when the
Yeah.
time capsule is released.
Yep.
right? Or
Absolutely.
when the frequency matches up and you and I were both doing the work we needed to do in our own worlds to get that frequency to a place. I'm reminding everyone of that magic.
Yeah.
But can you speak to a little bit of like what it's been like? Because you have written me some beautiful testimony, just
Mm.
being like when you wrote the part about like success coach, I'm like, I'm not trying to
Oh
change
yeah.
in my
No.
field. I am literally here to as divine service for you guys in your mission and what you're here to do. I'm not trying to put you into a cookie cutter situation.
Yeah.
So what has it been like being in my space for the last few months? And now you're in the mastermind doing high level, next level coaching for your business, taking it to the next level. What has this been like in just the last few months compared to the last few years of business work?
Oh my goodness. Well, in my own life, I feel alive for the first time, maybe in my whole life. And so I think that that's a big part of like that alignment piece. And I'll say, like, for everyone listening, if you're really stuck, look at the big things. Sometimes it's not the little things. Sometimes you got to make a really massive, big change that you don't want to change. And that's the thing that you have to do, and it's wondering, looking around, like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? Well, maybe look next to you. I don't know. Maybe look in the mirror. I don't know. Maybe look, like it's these just saying, right? Um, but I say that because it's important, but also because of that aliveness. I feel like that's the huge difference. I feel like I let myself be seen now. And that was the matching where had I come in before, I wasn't a match for what you had to offer in the way that I wasn't in the space to let myself be alive. I wasn't in the space to let myself be seen. And I do, and I am now. And so I think the success piece too, I immediately felt that. Like I just, as I came into the container and just like this woman, you, Jayme, it, you are amplifying people's success trajectory is what it is. And whatever that means for each individual, it's like you have that in you. It's part of your signature that you do that and you ignite a person to their own amazingness. And then, yes, it's super fun to hear like the strategic stuff. And I've been around the block a little bit. And it's just really beautiful to see, like, this is what's working for me. This is really fun. Why don't you try this? There's no everybody do the same thing, but everyone can try it if they want to. It's this beautiful personalization with also let's share the wealth. It's like this, it's just this really fun intersection of a little bit of all the things. And it's not, and I find like there's just a focus on the positive and not like I know some people feel like that could be bad, right? Like this, I don't know, this toxic positivity, silliness that people talk about. Well, I shouldn't say silliness, but you know what I'm saying. And I feel like while that's true in this space for you, like there is this, we're looking at the focus is on what's working.
Yes.
And yes, we dissolve the dark, and yes, we deal with stuff, and yes, we go in the shadow and we're in it and we're in the trend. And we also look at like what's working, what am I? I'm beautiful, I'm gorgeous. What do I need to do? Like and that. And I think that that's super important because if we get really stuck on what's wrong, all we're doing is creating more of what's wrong because that's what we're looking at and what we're focusing on. We can see it, okay, and then move on to what's my focus, which is what's working. And I feel like you do that in the spaces that we're in, like you really augment that and you steer people towards that. So if somebody's ready to really focus on how to move things forward in a positive way and look at what is working, even if it feels like there's only one thing. You have to see the one thing because if you don't, you can't believe in yourself and you can't have courage and you can't have confidence or any of the things that are required of being a business owner. I don't care what kind of business owner you are. So, yeah,
Oh,
there you go. You're amazing, lady.
that was the best 90 seconds
Of why Jayme's
of,
amazing.
of my year. So thank you. Thank you. Sometimes you need to call in the people to just reflect it back to you. And I
Yeah.
have to say, after all these years of doing this, I had to myself get really okay with
Yeah.
hearing people talk about my
hmm
work
Yeah.
in the worst ways and in the best ways. But you know what? I
Yeah.
always get really great feedback because I focus on that. And then I write it all down. Have I made
I
you do
love that.
that? I tell everyone, go write all the testimonies down, get it all on a Google Doc so that when you feel like you're in the shit of it, you don't need the testimonies for marketing. You need it for yourself.
Yeah.
right? When you just need to
Correct.
go, oh my God. And I will come back to the words of women like you. So thank you.
Hmm.
And that gives me
Absolutely.
life again. That brings me life,
I love
brings me back to life again. Oh, this was amazing. And if you guys want, so go find the link in the show notes to reach out to her. Go find her on social media. Join our communities. Join her community. Go get started. If you're looking for a new modality, like when you were saying this, I'm like, I read the thing about your book, and I'm like, I need to get that book. And then listening to you talk about it again, I need to
hmm
get it. And I was reading your reviews on Google on that book. Phenomenal.
Yeah. Thanks.
You've got
Yeah, they're all good.
you've got great reviews on that. It made me want to buy the
Mhm.
book.
Yeah. It's a great book. I love that book. I loved writing the book. It's a great book. Yeah, it's a
What's the name
great
of it
book.
so that people can
It's
go?
the expansion principle,
Oh,
healing
it
for a
is.
new earth. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's funny because I wasn't into the whole new earth thing, and that's what I was told the book was going to be called. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, yeah, it's the new earth. I'm like, oh, what a rolling my eyes, right? And but yes, because that's what we're creating. That's what we're in now, and it is.
I think it's a
It's
it's a frequency signature.
mhm.
That the name, the title, those
Yeah.
letters, those words together, because I
Oh
felt the
yeah.
same way about it. I was like, I was channeling about the new earth in like 2018, right? With like
Yeah, I
being out,
remember.
and then I'm like, oh, I can't. It's like, oh, okay. But it is something. And even if it's
Yeah,
actually what we're heading towards, right? We are heading towards that, but it's bigger than that. It's more
it
beautiful
is.
than that.
Than anything we could imagine. It
Exactly.
is.
I
Yeah.
think that the new earth is what our brains can handle
Hmm.
right now.
Oh yeah.
Well, you and I could clearly just go on and on and
We
on.
could.
Feel free to join the communities that either of us are in to hear us
Or
go,
both.
or both, to hear us go on and on and on.
There you
And
go.
this is what it's like to gather with women like you
Hmm.
every week.
Yep.
I think that's so powerful. I think a lot of people are so lonely doing this,
Hmm.
and there are amazing communities out there
There really are.
filled with
Mhm.
great people doing phenomenal stuff. And I'm just honored that you wanted to come into mine.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to have found it to finally been like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that.
I'm excited for 2025.
Me too.
I know you're
And
excited.
yeah, I don't know that I was as much as I am now. Like you definitely ignited that a lot. I knew I was ready to work. I was ready to work, and I took some time off, and I had the privilege of being loved and cared for in a way where I could, right? And then I was ready, and then there you were, and now let's rock and roll, right? Yeah,
I am so excited for our next session. I'm excited for everything 2025
me
and
too.
be
Yeah,
along and walking this journey with you.
yeah,
So
me too with you. Thank you.
I'm
Thanks
going
for
to be on
having me.
your podcast next. So everyone
Mhm.
listening to that, listen and watch.
Pop over.
Ready for that? What's the name of your podcast so they can go look it up too?
Seeds of expansion.
Oh, love it. Oof, oof.
Mhm.
Okay. This was amazing, eye-opening, and beautiful. I know this inspired many people today. So we're going to let this frequency of this episode just continue to radiate from both of our fields out to the hearts who need it. Thank
I
you so
love it.
much for joining us. Until next time, Dr. Alexis, we will see you all on our next episode. Bye, everyone.